Welcome to GothCast. I'm Dr. Sanders.
And I'm just Bryan.
And today we have, part 2 of Peter Murphy. That's the quickest I've ever said the title to an episode.
Should we mess around for a minute just to get everybody comfortable?
Hey, Brad, do you like Bauhaus?
I do.
Did you like the singer of Bauhaus?
I do.
You want
like
to talk about him?
Yeah.
Oh, but wait, again?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, let's do that.
Peter Murphy part 2.
All right.
So continuing our discussion on Peter Murphy into the mid-90s to 2011. I mean, it's a weird time when he went solo, like just in general. This is even stranger time.
It is.
But we do have some pretty interesting stuff that's happening here. Also, I do want to say that in our recent news, or I hate it, it's going to date this episode when I say this, is upcoming. They've announced even more shows for the Bauhaus reunion. So Peter Murphy had his, health issues. He had a heart attack. And then shortly after he recovered, there's going to be a full Bauhaus reunion with all the original members at the Hollywood Palladium. And so initially there was one show, and I think there's up to 3 shows right now.
Dang.
And they are all selling out. So yeah, that's crazy. It's kind of weird timing, and I didn't really pick the episode because of that. Anyway, let's get on to the next albums. We stopped at Holy Smoke, and Peter Murphy's last records that we talked about, from Should the World Fail to Fall Apart up to Holy Smoke, are amazing. I thought they were great records, and we pretty much just spent that whole episode going, yeah, this one's great.
Yeah. Discussion.
This one's great. Oh, it's cool. This one's great. And now we're getting into some of the more, I feel like it's going to really be to people's particular taste on this kind of stuff.
Yeah, this stuff is going to be a little polarizing, I think.
Yeah, definitely with these next few releases, it's just different. You have less of a band sort of feel. Holy Smoke was the last album to have his standard backing band. He called it the 100 Men. That was, we talked about that a lot in the last episode, about he had this group of people who he just made these records with who are really amazing, but now he's kind of just collaborating with a lot of different people and has less of a stable lineup. He still does have some of the same collaborators in terms of songwriting, but even that changes as this goes on. But the first album we're going to talk about is 1995's Cascade.
Rhymes with facade.
I mean, you're right.
Yeah. That's not how you pronounce that word.
Yeah.
Sorry, Peter.
Oh. But yeah, this, man, immediately, I'm going to say, I don't like this album as much as I liked Holy Smoke. It's not really a bad album. I'll say that. Cascade, I don't view Cascade as a bad release. I just view it as something that's different. It just feels, unfortunately, I'm going to talk about a little bit of this. I'm going to say some good things too. But to me, it feels like less of a band at this point. Much more of a Peter Murphy. It feels more like a Peter Murphy solo album, if you could say that. And we did talk about how in the last releases that his vocals are pushed very high because, hey, it's Peter Murphy show,
Right.
But for this record, it feels like each of the songs are kind of separated. Like they're played by different band members or something. I don't know.
I'm giving you funny looks because I really enjoyed this album, but it definitely feels more like alt rock, just generally, 90s alternative rock throughout the album. But I think the mixing is really great. I think the instrument choices blend really well. I think it's got a great sound. And I think that, I've talked about people losing fire over time and that kind of thing. And, and I want to make it clear that, when I say losing fire, I don't really mean fire in the same way as aggression, like aggressive music. I think there's a lot of passion and emotion in this. Yeah. And I really appreciated that about it.
Yeah, there is. And I think for any of his releases, I don't think he really phones it in at all. It's definitely something that's more obvious. It seems like he's more just energetic in some releases. We'll talk about that.
I disagree with you on that.
Oh, really? You think every release he's on it?
No. I mean, I think there's we're going to come to one where I think he's phoning in a little bit.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. But yeah, you're right. A lot of the alternative rock stuff, I feel like a lot of the songs on here kind of sound, or maybe just the way it was mixed or composed, it does sound like a lot of, like you said, 90s alternative rock.
Yeah.
You have Mercy Rain, which is pretty much just sounds like, Wicked Game.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
well, wicked game. You know that song?
Yeah.
It's very much sounds just like Peter Murphy's version of that. You have some stuff that even sounds like Soundgarden and stuff, like kind of the guitars. And that's one of the killers for this album for me. You have Michael Brook, who is, I guess, an infinite guitar player.
Yeah, infinite sustain.
Yeah. And he's done lots of things. He even did an album with Peter Newton from Clan of Xymox. But of course, he's probably known for working with Brian Eno. But that, I just don't like his style. I mean, I'll just say it. I mean, I tried really hard to like his style.
Really?
But that's what I had the hardest time with this record. It's not that the songs aren't great or anything. It's just the guitar compositions on this I just don't like. And
including Mercy Rain? Or especially Mercy Rain.
It's just atmospheric guitar, you know, it just didn't.
I thought it really worked well for it.
I mean, like you have like gliding like a whale. I mean, that has a cool like kind of layered guitar thing, and some of them are kind of strange, and it's kind of like like alternative rock ballad sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I just didn't like the guitar compositions. That was really the killer. I just couldn't get it out of my head when I was listening to it. I think maybe some of the worst, or some of the, I guess, parts that I really didn't like were Sails Wave Goodbye. That was where it really stuck out to me that this was a thing that I'm like, I don't think I can get on board with this for whatever reason. I know.
Yeah, no, I really liked the kind of the electronic experimentation on that song.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like this a heck of a lot better than you, but I hear what you're saying, like about sounding a lot like different bands. You know, I think that like I'll Fall With Your Knife, which is, I guess, one of the more popular ones on this album. The guitar sounds kind of like Bush and Glycerin.
Is that what it sounds like? Oh my gosh, it was bugging me so much.
Yeah.
I wrote sounds like some 90s song, but I can't figure out what.
Yeah.
But that's so true. I mean, even like you have like Wild Bird's Flock, which has, again, that super 90s guitar sound. It's just hard to say. It's like that kind of dry, distorted sound, or kind of like that chunky. You just know when you hear it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all. I mean, I'll Fall With Your Knife is a great song. I mean, it's great Murphy performance. It's like this cool build up.
It sounds like you didn't really like a whole lot of them.
I mean, I like the song. I like the songs. I just don't like probably the way that they're recorded. I'll put it that way.
Sure.
It's like they're hiding in there for me. You know what song I do like?
What?
Was a single from this record was The Scarlet Thing in You. It was energetic. It actually kind of sounds different than a lot of stuff on the album, at least to me. It's definitely like very poppy.
Yeah.
You know, big choruses and kind of just sounds like a pop song.
Yeah, it's kind of feel good alt rock.
I thought it was pretty good. You know, I can accept it. I enjoy it.
All right.
But it does stand out for me as like, oh, this is very obviously the one that was going to be the single. It's weird because whenever you hear Holy Smoke, we commented on how Holy Smoke sounds so different than anything that was out there at the time. It's almost like then he heard what was going on there at the time, and it's like, okay, let's do that with Cascade.
Yeah. I mean, it does seem like he gets influenced pretty hard by his surroundings over the next several albums.
Well, yeah, and he also collaborates and takes a lot from that. You know, even with Bauhaus and stuff, just kind of relying on, hey, these guys do this well, and then with his solo records, kept the 100-man backing group, and they, you know, obviously influenced that sound a lot with the whole fretless bass thing and all that. And then, for better or worse, yes,
What do you think of track 10? Huvola?
Huvola? Well, he says in the song.
Yeah.
That's how he says
Huvola.
it. Yeah, it's really long and it's very religious sounding. What was up with that? Like, it's just on the album. It's just so different than everything else on the record.
I really like that one too.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Well, the intro reminds me a bit of Smashing Pumpkins, but I think the backing vocals, the synth guitar, the synth and guitar.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I thought that went really well to Peter's voice.
Yeah.
And I mean, I thought it was really, really well put together.
And you do actually have a lot of like electronic sort of keyboards, and it's not saying that he didn't have some like layering of synths and everything in the previous ones. This is where you really start to notice like electronic music getting in there a little bit, especially with like the song Cascade itself.
Yeah.
Which also sounds like a Final Fantasy VII song. At least like the main riff.
Yeah.
The keyboard riff sounds like
Genova project.
The Genova. I think it's Genova boss fight or Genova theme or whatever. It's. I mean, I know that came out later, so like Final Fantasy VII came out later than Cascade did, but it's very similar. Just thought I'd mention that just in case anybody wanted to have some Final Fantasy references in Peter Murphy talk.
Oh, let's do some more references.
Okay.
So if you're a fan of Jewel,
yeah. How weird.
Yeah, for this album he toured with Jewel. It's just kind of an interesting choice. Yeah, I don't know. Just I think I actually really like this album. I think it's a great album. There's lots of feels, but it's not really spooky.
Yeah, this is where we start to see him kind of distance himself from that a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know if, I believe it was intentional, especially since there are, a number of times where he didn't seem to quite embrace some of that, especially on the American side.
Yeah.
Of being asked like, oh, you're Godfather, like blah, blah, all this stuff. It seemed like for a little bit, he was kind of like, well, I want to move past that. Like a lot of...
Quit trying to put me in a box.
Yeah, especially, with a lot of the goth artists did that, or artists who are like mostly associated with that. You have Robert Smith, and then all of a sudden he does Friday I'm in Love off of Wish.
Right.
And that whole album is really different. And then Wild Mood Swings, of course, for The Cure in like 96, I think, that's like really out there as far as like trying to break away from it. And then, of course, just a number of other artists. Hey, if Zymox trying to do it.
Yeah.
Maybe less successfully so. But you do have a lot of that. And I think that this was probably... I don't even see why he would need to, though, because, I just like the material. I thought it was so good, like his previous 4 albums. And not that there's anything wrong necessarily with Cascade. Most of it just boils down to my taste, especially for guitar. Like, how I'm very... Like, that's one thing I'm pretty particular about, is I know what I like in terms of guitar.
Yeah.
And I did not like the guitar on this album. And it is one of those things where Peter Murphy kind of relies on other musicians to kind of help him beef up or establish the sound. I think in this case it might have been to his detriment for fans like me. Sure. This was the last album he did with Beggar's Banquet, which was the album company he had been releasing albums with ever since Bauhaus. So kind of, even though this album's sort of a shift in some ways with kind of swapping out band members, this was also another shift in as far as commercial viability or, just a record company thing.
Yeah.
Also, for a little bit, it would be the last time he collaborated with Paul Statham, who had worked on previous records. He does come back, though, I think so.
Yeah.
On, later records. But this album actually is pretty neat in some ways. If you wanted to hear kind of Peter Murphy's probably most 90s album.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, this would be it. You have the kind of alternative, upbeat, sort of ballads, but more like sentimental, upbeat songs, if that makes any sense. Gosh, I don't know how to explain 90s like pop, because it's not like necessarily aggressive. This album is way less aggressive than anything he's done probably up to now.
It's not aggressive at all. That's why I felt the need to make sure that people knew I wasn't equating fire with aggression.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of fire here, but I don't think it's like punk fire.
No, it is not. It is definitely not. I am really confused a little bit by just the decision to do this record the way he did it, because he was doing kind of his own thing for a little bit.
Yeah.
I guess with Deep, he kind of was catering to sort of the mainstream. This just feels so out of left field. Like I bet if we had done, like, say the albums we were doing for this were going to be Deep, Holy Smoke, Cascade, and Dust. Like if we did those, if that was the 4 albums, I feel like we would have been like, what happened? But because it's so segmented, like this is the first album we're talking about this episode.
That's true. Yeah, I'll give you that.
Yeah, because it seems like, like he had this pattern for the first 4 albums, and then all of a sudden it's like Cascade. And there's nothing wrong with it. I just like Holy Smoke so much, and that's such an amazing album. And yeah, man, it's just the structure of it, just and the mixing and the tone of it just didn't click with me as much as I wish it did. But
that's how I feel about the next album. Actually, no, 2 albums from now. Next album. Yeah.
Jeez.
Well, I'm not saying the name of it. But I do, before we move on to anything else, I do want to touch on Subway track 2.
Okay.
Not only did I think the song was great, but also a little bit of nerd trivia. There's like a UK phone ringing in the background, and it's kind of used as the not only like ambient sound in the background, but also like for pacing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like, where do I know that from? Oh yeah. Okay. from waiting for somebody to pick up the phone.
Nice. I like it. Well, that's Cascade. I mean, it's pretty much. I wish there was more to say about this album, but it's kind of it. It's kind of Pete Murphy's 90s alternative rock album.
If I have to convince somebody to give this album a chance, I'd say listen to All Fall with Your Knife and Huvole.
Really, if I was gonna convince somebody,
or Huvola, sorry.
No, Huvola, yeah. I would say listen to The Scarlet Thing in You and
and then move to the next album. Fair enough. That's Cascade, I guess.
Maybe Wild Birds Flock. I think that would probably be my second. All right. That's Cascade. Welcome to Random Interesting Goth Stuff,
AKA Riggs.
Starting off today, oh man, I keep on start with sad news. And I don't know why I'm laughing, but it's very sad.
It is sad.
I don't know why we start with the sad things. Probably because they're always the biggest stories. But unfortunately, many of you have heard that Sid Haig has passed away. Many people know him, of course, for the famous character Captain Spaulding from House of a Thousand Corpses, Devil's Rejects, and of course the upcoming Three from Hell. That's what I think the craziest thing about it is, they just finished filming that movie not that long ago. And then he now just passed away, 80 years old. Gosh, it was so sudden, I guess. Most of the people, I remember Rob Zombie as, he was admitted to a hospital, and then Rob Zombie, he was just getting axed constantly, and he has posted, I know about as much as you guys do. I'm just waiting for updates. And then, of course, just passed away. And Elvira shared her thoughts on it, and it was just really sad. He appeared in tons of other like little roles over the years. I think I've even seen it where he was like in Dukes of Hazzard. And it's so fun. It's crazy because he even looked like the same back then, like way back when. I remember, this is kind of going to date something. I remember years ago inside of my apartment watching The Devil's Rejects on my modded Xbox. It's just crazy. A lot of people did comment on, at least I remember recently, when I saw recent photos of him, before any of this news happened or whatever, I was like, man, he looks really thin. Like much more, he was kind of a bigger guy.
Yeah.
But then it was like, oh, that's crazy. And that just seemed like it just happened like overnight. I was just like, what? What do you mean? It's kind of a shock, but it's just so sad whenever you see a horror icon now. I mean, it's just one of the first I can think of where it's just like, what? That really happened?
Yeah. That's, it's going to be happening too more and more as time goes on, which is really unfortunate. But I mean, the media that we've been consuming as a society, we've become more and more accustomed to having all these things accessible to us and
people
and people, right? And the amount of influence people have has grown and grown because they're exposed to more and more, audience over time. And this is going to be becoming, an ongoing thing.
It's gonna be crazy. How are people going to get mad at celebrities then whenever they're like, as the decades go on, there's going to be fewer and fewer?
Well, there'll be new ones.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah, there'll be new ones that we'll grow to love just long enough for them to also pass away.
This is awful message.
It's really sad.
This is so awful. Anyway, it is very extremely sad news. Man, I can't believe it. Just seems weird to even think that happened. It doesn't seem real yet because I think but when we're recording this, it pretty much just happened yesterday.
Yeah.
One of the other stories I want to share, because my God, I can't wait. The CW and Warner Brothers are apparently developing a new Dark Shadows show. It's going to be called Dark Shadows Reincarnation. Apparently they're just trying to get the pilot made for it. They did a similar thing for the Munsters a few years ago. They did 1313 Mockingbird Lane with Eddie Izzard, and it was okay.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah. I like Eddie Izzard and stuff, but it was...
Me too.
It just kind of was a really weird... It was just a weird take on it. It's going to be an hour-long pilot that they're going to try and make, and, I'm all for it, honestly. I mean, like Dark Shadows, people forget how many Dark Shadows things there are. One, there's like 10 million episodes of the original thing because it was on daily and it was broadcast live. So it's not like one of those things where it's like, oh, we have a season. It's like they have like every day. So it's like 1,000, 1,500 episodes or something like that.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I think I've watched so much of it. It's kind of disgusting to think about that. They also had the show in the 90s, the revival show. That's great. I love that. I have it on DVD. But it's that's a really great show. By the way, the DVDs for it, this gives me a chance to rant about some Dark Shadow stuff.
Sure.
The DVDs for that was TV show was apparently shot in 4:3, and they like pan and scan widescreened it. Like they
Gross.
Yeah. So the DVD looks cool, like it looks right if you don't know what you're looking at.
Sure.
But then after you see it, you're like, that is like incredibly cropped. So I would say that it's a technical error on it. But if you don't know, then it shouldn't bother you. But it bothers me so much.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we're media nerds, and
I know.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that. Actually, I don't know when the release is supposed to be for this, but I'm assuming they're just going to follow the same story of Jonathan Frid yet again. Hopefully they do. I mean, I always hope it gets picked up. And they have like I think there was like another one. I think there's like another Dark Shadows, like smaller series. I think, I don't know. It's hard to remember. The 90s one is like the one I remember outside of the main one the most. But there's all kinds of things. There's all people don't really realize, especially in America, how big that was. Like that was a phenomena. Like it is not that big here. And plus, especially because it's an older thing, you know, it's kind of like asking people like, oh, what's your favorite episode of the 60s Addams Family or something like that?
Sure.
You know, that was like huge. Most people are like, oh, 90s one, you know, whatever. And then even now people are like, oh, the 90s one? Like, oh, I watched that when I was a baby, you know, or something.
Oh, that's so weird to think about.
I know, yeah. But yeah, Dark Shadows, like, you know, there's all the book series and some of them are really good, actually. You can actually find some of them like on a like public domain. But yeah, it's crazy. I'm really looking forward to it because, I mean, don't get me wrong. I love like the comedy vampire stuff we have now. What we do in the Shadows, the TV show was like amazing, but like I like some some serious vampire stuff too. And Dark Shadows, although I will admit, for modern audience, I always say this, for a modern audience, sometimes it's hard to go back to some of those. Sure. Because I know that Max says I watch the most boring things that exist. You know, I just I'm like, I can just watch. She's like, I don't even know how you watch this. Like, I'm like, I'm learning about this really random piece of technology from 1970.
It's edutainment.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, some of the stuff, like especially the audio and stuff, you can't really watch a lot of the Dark Shadows with subtitles because who the heck is going to do subtitles for like 1,500 episodes of a show? And like watching the kind of live soap opera stuff is just doesn't really connect. That's why I recommend if people trying to get into it now, if you were so not into the Tim Burton one, which was like very different. I like the Tim Burton one, but I've said my opinions in another video where it's like, if you don't know what the original is, this is really great. You know, if you know what the original is, like if Dark Shadows, the movie, was called Tim Burton's wacky comedy vampire movie, right? Everybody would be like, oh, this is like amazing. They'd be drawing fan art and stuff, but because it's like Dark Shadows, which I think most people who are complaining that it's not like the show probably never even saw the show. I'm not saying that's like the show. I'm just saying that like most people who would be like, oh, you know, like it's really dumb because it wasn't like the original. I'm like, do you watch what the original was? Like,
or are you just parroting what you heard somebody else say?
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure like most people, I'm like, who's even your favorite character? They're like, oh, Barnabas Collins. Like, can you name like any? Like, it seems like a lot of people who I'm not gonna say who it was, but somebody I knew who's close to me was like, oh, it's like so. Like, I heard it's like really bad because it's like not like the thing. I'm like, have you ever even watched the original show? Like, ever? They're like, well, no. I was like, well, just watch it. And then we watched the movie and they're like, oh, this is so funny. Like, I was like, yeah, I mean, I don't think you're going back and watching this show, like, period. I watched the show and I liked the movie, but I'm pretty easy to please for the most part if I'm not reviewing something like really in depth. Anyway, point is, Dark Shadows needs more love. What were you saying? New show. Okay. What's your bit?
Vampire Freaks is closing down.
Man, yeah, I heard about that like a little bit ago, and I guess it's really happening, huh?
Yep.
Well, I don't really talk about a lot of controversial stuff on here. I guess I talk about controversial stuff, but I don't talk about stuff in a I think is controversial, I guess. But yeah, I mean, that's I know, like, especially a lot of people who are going to be probably around our age are going to remember that site pretty, like, vividly. Like, oh yeah, there's this, like, goth alternative version of MySpace.
Right.
And
like Dead Journal.
Oh yeah. Oh god. Yeah. Oof. Yeah.
Okay, just a moment of silence for that one. Sorry.
Yeah, serious. But yeah, the that's a definite time capsule for the internet in a lot of ways. And a lot of people had complained about the site. I don't know the person involved, like the main people from Vampire Freaks. I've talked with some of them actually over the years, I guess. Now I think about it, even for GothCast. I've interacted with a few of them just from being in the LA scene. Weird. It's weird. I didn't even think about that. I know people have been complaining that the website hadn't really ever been updated, for modern audiences, or they hadn't grown with the times. And then there was a whole bunch of stuff. Like if you just make a post on like Goth Reddit or something like that, there are a lot of really, really harsh opinions about the site as far as, like, say, community moderation or harassment or things like that. I know there have been a lot of claims laid against the site for those topics, and I guess I don't really have enough information to be able to, say anything about it. But it's really strange that some people are very nostalgic about it. Some people have talked really great about the people who have been involved with it over the years and the people that they've met and stuff. Some people have some negative stuff, and I think that's kind of also just like the way social media used to be.
Well, I mean, but you could say that about Reddit or Facebook.
Yeah, or anything now, right? Yeah.
Even LinkedIn nowadays is full of ads and people poking each other and whatever the heck else is going on.
Yeah. It's so it's, I know that there's a lot of different opinions on it. If you're asking my opinion, I mean, I don't really have an opinion of it. I mean, I guess I've never really been a social media. The only reason I have social media in the first place is because I do GothCast. If I didn't have GothCast, I wouldn't even exist on the internet. If I didn't have things that I made that I wanted to share with people, I would pretty much just be like, I wouldn't even have a phone problem. I'd just probably have a flip phone or something.
Yeah. Honestly, the podcast, to me, when you first started doing it, was pretty out of character, I thought. Here, let me interact with the public in a very real and direct and personal way.
Yeah.
And let them reach out to me and see all my private stuff. Yeah, you're typically a pretty private person.
I'm an extremely private person.
Yeah.
Even in so much as I share, I'm still a very private person.
Yeah. That's true.
It's like, so if people ask me like, oh, how do you feel about all this vampire? I'm like, look, I've never really shared my life online. I share the things that I create, and I don't get much more involved with it, or I'm just not interested. I just don't see it. Like, there's some people who are obsessed with their Instagrams and their whatever it's going to be, Snapchat. I don't know what's the most popular thing. Whatever it's going to be. Whatever I'm saying right now is going to be dated anyway.
Yeah.
But like, I don't understand it, like, at all. I never feel like I'm part of an online community. I mean, maybe like to YouTube to some extent, maybe, or like, maybe like the Belfry, but like still, I don't think about it like that. Like,
it's harder for older people, especially those in their thousands.
Yeah. To understand
to new technology.
I just don't get it. I just really don't understand it. Like, hundreds of years ago, I was sharing these stone tablets.
Yeah. They, get out of here, man. It's too much work. Just too much work to carve into these stone tablets. No, just, there is definitely a legacy there. It was, there for a lot of people when they really needed other people to relate to, in the goth community, when you didn't have things, you didn't have a lot of things where, like meetups didn't exist, like Foursquare before it became a website and it was like a meetup group, or, tracking whatever, none of that stuff really existed in the same way that you can, just reach out and find people who are like you these days. There's no subreddit thread for goth people back then. There's like none of that stuff really. So this is like the one place where you could go and put up pictures or talk about music or whatever and not really be that afraid of...
Put up your Invader Zim gifs.
Yeah. Yeah. Of Gur dancing and eating soap. But yeah, I mean, so...
Like this big.
Yeah. It's like a 12K file or something.
Is it?
terrible compression.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, it definitely filled this, this need for a very long time. I'm sure there are a lot of things just like other social media places that, ended up not being so great about it, but it's like a part of the goth social media history.
Yeah, for people of a certain age, it's like, it definitely is probably much more relevant than probably you can ever imagine.
Yeah. So Wayback Machine, get on it.
Yeah, right.
You better archive
Back
that whole flipping thing.
Yeah. And last story I want to talk about is I don't even know if I should. This is probably one of the most controversial things that's ever been on this podcast. So I did the London After Midnight episode.
Yeah.
And then a certain member of the band made a very, very, very long post.
Oh.
That basically addressed every
nitpicky thing.
Yeah,
yeah.
God, it was so funny. And I still get people to this day going, hey, I remember we did that Let Up to Midnight thing, and that was so awesome that person freaked out about that. It's I didn't get it. I mean, I just review stuff.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's hard to be a creator of anything and have people, have it. Well, not even have people necessarily feel like people are crapping on the thing you made. You know what I mean?
I really don't. Which is like why.
Okay,
that's why that one I was so surprised, because it was like. I thought I said a lot of really good things.
So you don't have a human ego, Donnie. Your ego is so vastly different than so many other people.
I only care what I think.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, you'd be like somebody goes like, your music sucks. And you'd be like, yeah, whatever, it's not for you. And then that's it.
Music,
like you don't really think about it very much. Like obviously that really hit a nerve,
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So, you see how, you view, especially if you're a YouTuber, like people get I talk to other YouTubers who get all irritated by, I can't believe people say it. I'm like, so what?
Just delete it and stop thinking about it.
Most majority, if a majority is good, then so what? Keep posting it. Like, I mean, it could be bad for, if you, I don't know, like if you've been a creator for a while, like, I think you eventually have to do that, but a lot of people don't. Like they just eats them up. But I don't care. I'm making the stuff for me. Right. The fact that you guys get to enjoy it is nice, but I'm making it for me most of the time.
Yeah. And my standpoint really is, if I don't like something, that's just me. Like, don't give a crap about that.
Yeah,
just keep doing your thing. If it's making you happy, then why do you care what I think about it?
Yeah. Anyway, the whole thing of this was London for Midnight made a post saying that they got the final London selected scenes from the End of the World 91-19 back for mastering, and they're totally blown away. Basically remixing the album from the original master tapes and talking about how, it sounds way superior to the 1991 mix, way more powerful, blah, blah, all this, fixing all misalignments and all that stuff, and recording some new stuff. And yeah, it's basically, there should be like a new release with vinyl and CD and all that stuff coming out
right on
at some point. There's not a date, I don't think, but that was something I talked about actually when I reviewed that album initially, because that's one of those things where I talked about how great the album was.
Yeah.
And that album specifically, Selected Scenes from the End of the World, I think that's called the name of it. It's been a long time. And I think the album's great. I think it has some great songs, and it was it was remastered in 2003, and I like both versions anyway. So we're going to get a third remix, like a third mix of it. I thought the 1991 mix was awesome. And that's actually one of those things where, even my music, it's like, okay, I feel like if it's been 10 years, I'm like, that's pretty much the mixy. That's pretty much the album.
Yeah.
I think the album's done.
Yeah.
And so I think so we're going on almost 30 years and going to do another remix of the album. I'll still listen to it. I mean, I listened to the 2003 ones, which were really good. But I do feel, I guess, with that kind of music stuff, it's like whenever you start fixing misaligned track, my timing was off a little bit here and whatever. It's kind of a steep road sometimes. Whenever you're like, well, I could fix this and I could fix this, and and then I could fix. Yeah. Oh well, hey, I could fix this too, and I could fix this too, and I remastered my first album not that long ago, and I was pretty much like, well, I could just sit down and read track guitar and do this stuff, and I was like, you know what? Nah. I was like, I'm just gonna live with it the way it is, because it is now. I just put it out there.
There's an article I can't tell you who it's written by, but it's called In Defense of Good Enough. I'm pretty sure that's the name of it. But it addresses basically like your return on investment, right? Like the time, energy, effort, money, whatever you put into that, you could be putting into something else. And so you have to look at the trade-off there. You have to see what your opportunity cost is.
Yeah.
Throw out some business words, but you have to look at really what you're giving up in order to spend time on that thing, you know?
Yeah. And that's how I feel about like a lot of music, you know, there's a lot of songs I could go back and redo or something like that, but I'm like, I'm good. The point is, everybody should go listen to this new remaster when it comes out. Because if it's taken time to do it, it must have been really important.
Yeah.
Like,
and they're probably going to do a really great job because it's obviously really important to them.
Yeah, master tracks, all that stuff. So
yep,
it's going to be cool, and you can check it out. And some pretty cool rigs actually this week.
Yeah.
Let's get like the music. Now we're going a number of years into the future because Cascade was in 1995 and Dust was released in 2002. A 7-year gap. In between that time, we have a lot of things actually happened. Obviously, we're not covering all of them. First of all, we had the Recall EP that was released in 1997. I think it was released on Red Ant Records, and that label went out of business shortly after. It is basically a reimagining of some of his previous hits, and it's
skip it.
Yeah, just skip it. I'm not a big fan of it. It's only a few songs, and it's just listen to the Indigo Eyes version on that, and then I think that'll pretty much explain whatever we need to explain on it. Because wow. Then we have, instead of 1998, so a year later, we have the Bauhaus reunion. And this was obviously a big deal. It was a huge tour. They did the Gotham live DVD and obviously did a ton of touring. It was a really big thing in the late 90s. And then after that was all done, and actually if you want to learn more about that, you can actually read David J's book on Who Killed Mr. Moonlight. It's hilarious. They talk about, like, he described the breakup. It's just hilarious the way how they just fought constantly. That's why I never thought there would be another reunion. That's why I'm so surprised whenever there's a reunion now, because that book is just like, wow, they really just don't get along. But you know, musicians are musicians, so they're very finicky. And then we also have, in the same year, we have Alive Just for Love, which is a great live album. You know, I gotta say, it's not my favorite Peter Murphy live record, actually. And I don't know what it is about his performance is good and everything, but I don't know about the way it's mixed. I think that's kind of my only gripe about it. It doesn't feel as big as I feel like the performances should sound, but it is also like an early 2000s live album. Yeah. So I don't know. People had it like the live albums are really hit or miss. You know that. I mean, but you get a lot of diversity in the songs. So, but first of all, I'm pretty sure this album was released before that, but it was released within the same year, I believe.
Yeah. I think Alive is actually listed as album number 8.
This is a really weird thing.
Yeah.
So
let's get into it.
Okay. So one of the problems we had with this episode, Alive Just for Love was released in 2001, right? And when I was doing research for this show, because we always do 4 albums, so it's really easy. You know, if we have band has 8 albums, we do 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we do 5, 6, 7, 8 next episode. Peter Murphy ended up being a pretty weird one because I discovered through just trying to figure out what the heck the 8th album was. I couldn't figure out what the 8th album for Peter Murphy was considered. I had no idea. And so even if you look on Wikipedia, right, it has Unshattered as 7, and then it has 9th. It even lists in the chronology. 9th album is 9th.
But they never say anything about number 8.
Yeah. And I was really confused. And Peter Murphy doesn't really have a good official website or like just a
good website in general.
Yeah, it's true.
Come on, man.
Yeah, I know, seriously. And it was really confusing me because I was thinking, and you can look through all the pages on Wikipedia unless they've been adjusted since I did this. I tried even searching what is Peter Murphy's 8th studio album, and it would just come up with 9th. And I was like, that can't be right. Because Unshattered is considered his 7th studio album. And so I'm assuming, and of course, Recall. Most people don't consider Recall like a full release because obviously it's not even couldn't even have songs.
Right.
But I think you said Discogs.
Right.
It listed as a full album, and so, but that doesn't even make any sense. Like at least from the way that people categorize it with Wikipedia, because then it means that they're just missing. They're not counting that album, and then they just never make anything considered the 8th album.
Right.
It would say, oh, then Dust would be his 7th album, but nobody does that. I'm just saying, like this was really annoying. I was trying to figure out what is Peter Murphy's 8th album, because you have Should the World Fail to Fall Apart, Love Hysteria, Deep, Holy Smoke, that's 4.
Yeah.
Cascade, okay. Then the next studio album he did was Dust, right? So that's
right.
6. Then 7 will be Unshattered. That's the next album he went into studio and made a full package release for it.
Right.
And the next album that says Peter Murphy, like his next solo album, is 9th.
Maybe, I mean, we've talked about how bad I am at math. Maybe everybody around him is just bad at math.
Maybe. There's a whole bunch of stuff we were just trying to figure out, like, okay, does he include the iTunes things? Because he did do some iTunes releases.
Right. I mean, we really looked into this because it was intriguing.
Yeah, because, well, it's for us, it didn't add up because I was picking the albums. I was like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do, well, we shouldn't be on the 9th album. That's what drew attention to it, because it's like, oh, we should be on the 8th album. I was like, wait, what the heck is the 8th album? I have no idea what is considered his 8th album. And nobody else seems to mention, like, every time you look at a review of it, it's just talking about, oh, his last album, Unshattered. I'm like, what the heck is the 8th album?
Yeah, even on Discogs, it just alludes to it. It doesn't, like, flat out say that Alive is number 8.
Yeah,
you know?
I don't understand. I don't understand what the heck is his 8th album, or what would be put in there to be whatever number to make it like 9 albums.
Yeah.
This was super confusing to me. Yeah, it must be those. I just keep on thinking it must be those like iTunes things he did. Like he did.
It can't be. It can't be. There's not enough songs.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why it's 9. I have no idea.
But anyway, we're covering 9th
including
today.
Dolly's Car. Maybe no,
no,
because he didn't. Yeah, because then it would still be, because that make his first album, 2nd album. Oh, whatever. Anyway,
so for our purposes, 9th is 8th.
Yeah. God. The album is called 9th, just in case you didn't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're talking about his 6th album, Dust.
which is, of the albums and I think Donnie's going to argue with me about this, but of the albums we're covering today, it's the best of them.
I really don't agree with this one. I get where you're coming from with this. It's a very different experience. And this is not going to be to everyone's taste. And I did a lot of research actually into what the response to this album was.
Oh yeah, it was absolutely like you loved it or you hated it.
Yeah, and this is probably the one I was the least familiar with. I mean, honestly, there's not really a single or anything that has entered the public view really from this album since it's been released. I don't think he draws on it that much live. And
well, part of it is just there's so many guest.
Yeah, I didn't even know how you would do it.
And like a huge variety of instruments playing, and just
tons. This was basically Peter Murphy's ode to Turkish music.
Well, he moved there.
Yeah,
he was living in Turkey.
Yeah, we even had that with Holy Smoke. Yeah, where he kind of was isolated there. But this is really where he embraced the music. And he worked with producer Merkan Dede. I think that's how you say that.
Sure. Your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah. Just really embraced it. All the songs on this album are very long, longer than pretty much anything else. They are very atmospheric. They have just layers and layers of instruments. We have everything from stringed instruments to flutes to even like electronic kind of bass sort of stuff. Just everything. It barely resembles a Peter Murphy, like any of the material he released before it.
This is true. So I have to preface all of my gushing about this album really with, this is not what you would expect listening to Peter Murphy in general. It's Turkish music with Peter Murphy's influence in lyrics and vocals.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, I don't hate this album. I want to make that clear. It's just very different. It was almost hard for me to even review it because it is so insanely different than anything we've ever covered on the show. I do like a lot of the instrumentation. In fact, I like a lot of the kind of concept behind it. You know, even the beginning, it's called Itchings to Remember.
Things to remember, yeah.
Man, my cursive's all off. It's like with Things to Remember, you know, it has an intro like Diamond Dogs, where it kind of has a kind of like a deep, I mean, it really reminds me of it actually, the way it sounds, with the kind of like atonal sounds in the background, and then kind of telling a story, and you kind of get like electronically infused Turkish music.
Yeah.
And that kind of continues, you know, most of the stuff is atmospheric. It has, a lot of songs have this kind of eerie atmosphere, and it's very hard to describe unless you hear it. And it's really good for what it is, but it is not going to be to everyone's taste.
Yeah, no, that's true. You know, I think the closest thing I could say is if you're into Dead Can Dance, like if that's something that you're into and you really like, then you absolutely should give this album a listen. If that's not your style, then, you know, maybe listen to a couple tracks and just to get a feel for it. But
yeah, I would say if you listen to Your Face, which by the way, that's apparently Peter Murphy's favorite song, I guess. Just for Love, and then what was the other one? Yeah, I guess Things to Remember. Yeah, I would say if you listen to those three for me, that would sum up. If you're like, okay, am I gonna give this album a chance? Do you have like ones that you particularly like?
Yeah, track 2, Fake Sparkle. That's I really like that one. I thought it was a really, really good build. His vocals match, like he matches his tremolo to the tremolo of the instruments, which I really liked. I think Your Face is great too. I think the mixing on that is perfect. The vocal chorus is awesome on that. It's a slower song. I like the use of the heartbeat for the pacing of the song, and also kind of the background, bass notes and everything. I think the versions of My Last 2 Weeks and Subway on this are fantastic. I really, really like these versions of them.
Subway, that was such a strange one to me too.
Just there's like a lot of it sounds super rich and lush, just shows off the versatility of his voice and his musical ability. I really, really liked the album in general. I just think that all of the different instruments blended so well together, and you can tell that the people that he's working with in this are really fantastic musicians.
Yeah, definitely. They're all. I wonder what the recording process was like for this. I'm really curious. I mean, it must have been insane.
Yeah, stylistically, it's going to be off, but it's got like elements in Middle Eastern music, of course, because it's Turkish. Classical, some ambient techno, like trance stuff, prog rock. I mean, you're going to find a lot of different elements in here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's fantastic. I don't think it matches Peter Murphy's other work, but I really, really enjoy it.
That's why it's so hard to recommend. I mean, at the time, this actually did get really skewed reviews, and a lot of fans were super confused by it. I think, Peter Murphy is kind of like David Bowie, and he's a chameleon sometimes with, especially the earlier of his solo records, where he kind of is adapting a lot of different things. And,
right.
But I think for a lot of people's view, he might have gone too far on this one, and to where, yeah, like you said, and I saw this in some reviews from the time, which were all over the board. Some people were like rating it like 90s, and some people were rating it like 20. And one of the things I saw in it, and yeah, it's like you said, or a review which said, if you took Peter Murphy's voice off of this, you'd have some really good Turkish music. Because you have Peter Murphy's voice, you have some really okay Peter Murphy songs. And that's, that's how some people might feel like this. They're like, wow, sure. Peter Murphy, this is cool that
he's a guest singer in this band that decided to release an album under his name.
And I do feel like sometimes the vocals don't sit on these crazy melodies all that well. But that's going to be up to everybody's taste, honestly. It's hard music for me to review because I'm not really reviewing Turkish music that much. I mean, I review Goth music. And so it's hard for me to be like, yes, my favorite Turkish music album it doesn't, Peter Murphy's Dust compared to my, this list that I have in my head.
Here's where I'm going to plug TurkishCast.com. You can listen to me reviewing Turkish music. With another podcaster.
Yeah, I knew it.
Sorry, man. That's why I've been so busy.
Yep. But yeah, that's one of the problems I have with reviewing this kind of stuff. Just from what we've said, I think you should just make up your own mind on it. I mean, like we said, it's really interesting. It's super different. It's unlike anything else he has in his discography as of this recording.
Yeah.
And after this, he kind of went back to more of a pop sensibility. So
I got it. You know what? Like we talked about which songs I'd recommend. If you're considering listening to this album, you don't know, I would say listen to My Last 2 Weeks, because if you like that song from the previous release and you like this version, then I think you're going to like the rest of the album. I think the song is a really good song to start off with, and then when you add in all the different instruments and everything and the new arrangements, that's one of the ones that just is super impressive to me.
Yeah. Okay. That's pretty much all I have to say about this. By the way, you mentioned Dead Can Dance. We're actually going to see Dead Can Dance pop up in some of our continued history right before 9th because, we'll get to it.
They got into it for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Dang it. Said for sure. Man, I'd spent a couple episodes, I think.
Man. It's okay. Anyway, that's Dust. Peter Murphy may turn to dust, but he will remain unshattered.
I knew you were going to use the word remain for that intro.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't know what to say.
Well, 2004.
Oh.
And Peter Murphy releases the album Unshattered.
And I'm still living with my father.
In 2004?
Yeah.
Me too. So, this... this is a really quick turnaround for an album for him at this point. If you take into account 7 years of, gap in between the album, between Cascade and Dust, and then you have the album didn't do so well, and then 2 years later we have Unshattered come out.
Right.
That's probably not a coincidence. It usually isn't. Again, like when we talked about Cascade, I feel like Peter Murphy was probably dealing with some modern music kind of people. Because you have
kinda.
Yeah.
Did you look at the lineup?
Yeah. You have a lot of guest people on here. You have Kevin Haskins, so you have a little bit of a Bauhaus reunion right there. You have Eric Avery from Jane's Addiction. You have Dion Estes from Wham playing bass on some pretty cool tracks. Or at least really good bass. But yeah, you have like a million. Like this album could be basically called Peter Murphy and Friends.
Given how much I love this lineup, it's disappointing for me.
Not a fan, huh?
This album didn't do it for me.
That's funny because I like this album pretty decently. I mean, maybe it's because Dust is a really hard sell, and I just like the guitar better on this album, which I think was really what got me on it.
Sure.
Because I totally understand what probably how you feel about this. Is it does reek of the year that it was released. I think a perfect example of that is Give What He's Got. Very 2000s vocal effects, like that kind of distorted a little bit. Also, the guitars have the very shimmery 2000s isms.
Yeah, I think the vocal effects they're too distracting and they detract from the track for me.
Oh, absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. Like, it's too much. The whole song. I mean, it's fine if you want to do one. Like, for a chorus or something like that. The entire song has that crazy effect on his voice. I don't know what he was going for with this album. I think it was maybe just to, hey, let's get some pop songs out there. It doesn't feel like how a lot of his albums feel like kind of a little bit of a concept, like you kind of feel.
Yeah.
It doesn't really feel, it doesn't feel like a same unit, like a same kind of album for this. It's kind of like, oh, we had some songs. And you can even see with some of the things he collaborated on, like all the songs with Dion Estes, it's like, oh yeah, those songs sound similar, but then like some of these other ones sound really just completely different in like composition stuff. So it's not necessarily a cohesive kind of sound to this album. But I actually, for what it is, I thought it was a pretty okay listen. No.
Nah, like, so this is one of those ones where I probably will never listen to it in its entirety again.
Wow.
There's a couple on here that
Ooh.
I'm like, all right, they're okay songs, but I mean, honestly, I liked Dust so much that when I started listening to this, it was a letdown. It was disappointing. And part of it was just because it didn't feel like a cohesive album. Part of it was because, like I mentioned, it felt like in this album there was some parts where it just felt like he was kind of phoning it in. Face of the Moon, it didn't feel like he was really into singing the lyrics. The vocals were far too forward. I didn't really like the mixing. I mean, just like Piece of You, the lyrics there felt like too rudimentary for me. Like it's trying way too hard to be pop, and they were trying so hard to rhyme with basic word. I don't know. It just
I know what you're talking, like, yeah. I do think that lyrically this album, I don't even know what happened. I mean, honestly, like, because he's so poetic on previous releases.
Exactly.
And then you have like Kiss Myself. I just even saying it's ridiculous. But yeah, you have like the song "Kiss Myself," and by the way, the harmonica on that song.
Come on, man! You like Blues Traveler? Come on.
That's why I literally thought of Blues Traveler on this. Yeah, it's "Kiss Myself" has this crazy harmonica as like one of the main parts of it. And it also just has like weird mixing. It's really bright. It's trying to have this catchy sort of thing. It's kind of like, is this like the same guy who was in Bauhaus? I mean, and it has like kind of and throughout this whole album, I kind of just like almost a Smashing Pumpkins-y sort of influence.
Oh man, those are fighting words.
No, I mean like like what is it, Machina, whatever they had those albums at the time.
Yeah,
the way it sounds reminds me of those releases.
That hurts my soul.
I'm not saying in terms of songwriting. I'm saying the way that they like, how like when whenever somebody walks up and it's like, oh, give me that, they like point to a car.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, give me that Ferrari, and then you turn around and it's like a red Camry. That's kind of like what happened here.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's. I'll let that slide.
Okay. Good.
All right.
Because it sounds exactly like it. No. But yeah, I was okay with it. I mean, honestly, it didn't offend me that much. And some of the stuff, I did notice it though. I mean, I'll say that. Like you can hear just the influences of tons and tons of stuff on here, more the so than any other record, I think so far. Also, you have some really weird ones, like the intro song "Idle Flow," immediately funky and groovy, and it's weird. The guitar reminded me of like the main James Bond riff.
Yeah,
this was really weird. But yeah, that just the intro song. And by the way, that is Peter from Porno for Pyros on it. Like I said, this is the Peter Murphy and Friends album.
Right.
But that song kind of sets up what you're gonna expect from this album. It's very produced, very processed. Kind of these big courses, just kind of a very
that's the thing
is
time. I like the music of everyone involved in this album, but not really this album.
Wow, that's so weird. I wasn't even close to hating this album as much. I'm really surprised.
Yeah, I mean, so Weight of Love, that was the first one I started to really feel anything like, yeah, okay, like this is all right. Like Weight of Love, that's track 7, by the way. It took me 7 tracks to be like, yeah, okay, I maybe this will turn around.
Was it because of the good bass on there?
Yeah. And then Blinded Like Saul, I thought had a decent intro. It's kind of darker, thematically. And then the first Stone, some elements of acid rock in that I kind of appreciated. But then when we got to the last track, Breaking No One's Heaven, I was just like, oh man, this is mediocre, and it's really sad that it's a closing track.
Especially with the last one, especially with that song, it's basically a mediocre version of what he was doing with Dust.
Yeah,
like that was the problem, is that he's like had this whole album of like atmospheric music, and then he does an atmospheric song on this one to end it, and then it's just like, well, you already did that, and you did it way better.
Yeah.
There were moments on this I did really like. And it's probably going to seem really strange. Actually, what I'm going to say is Thelma sings to Little Nell with the accordion, like the kind of ballady song. I love that kind of music. I love it when the accordions are layered on stuff.
Yeah.
And that song, I thought it was great. I mean, I'll probably put that on playlists.
I think the instruments in that are good, but I just found it was like kind of too slow for. You know what I should have done is I should have popped it into VLC and sped it up.
Oh, sped it up. Do that.
Like I did that before. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that later on and see how I like it. But the repetitive, like the lyrics are just too repetitive for me.
Yeah. Okay.
And it was a little too slow, and I kind of lost interest. I listened to the whole thing, but there's actually one song on here where I didn't listen to the whole thing. Can you guess which one it was?
Which one you didn't listen to?
Yeah, I didn't listen to the whole thing of this song. And you know me, usually like I want to hear everything they got.
Yeah. Let's see. Is it Emergency Unit?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the one.
Okay. Well, okay, I can see how it wouldn't be for you. I mean, I liked it. I mean, but it's mostly because of the guitar. And because it has a really nice gutty guitar.
Man, you listen to anything with a good guitar, Donnie.
That's true. That's true. I will. It saved it for me. I mean, that's why I had a problem with Cascade, and
Sure.
it's why this album made it up for me. Is
Oh, you know what? Dust didn't have a lot of the guitar that you like.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
Didn't know.
Oh man.
Yeah, and the strings weren't. Well, they were memorable, but not the way I like them.
They were not guitar strings.
They weren't like major chorded.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't mimic the way people structure guitar. But yeah, I can see what you're saying with Emergency Unit. Well, I mean, that's kind of why like Thelma sings to Little Nell. It's kind of like a better version of Emergency Unit. I mean,
sure.
It's like they write a song that's okay, and then they make a better song one track later, and it's kind of a similar thing. It's softer, and it's softer than Thelma, and then it just has. I mean, if you don't like gutty guitars and acoustic stuff, it's, I mean, it's all, that song is basically just effects on guitars and Peter Murphy. I mean, that's pretty much, like, that's the whole song. So that's one of the problems with this album is you have some cool instrumentation and stuff, but the structures of it, they're pretty basic for the most part. You're not going to have a ton of experimentation, which is kind of what he was doing for a lot of the, like the last two albums. And including the Recall EP. I mean, I'm okay with it. I mean, if you want to hear just like 2000s, like, early to mid 2000s rock with Peter Murphy, with a ton of his friends, this is the album. Peter Murphy, Unshattered from his friendships.
And I'm not telling anybody not to listen to this album. It just wasn't for me, man.
Yeah, we're all over the place on this particular episode. I get it. I guess I'll just have to kiss myself. The one thing I did, there are a few things I did like, or I thought was, I guess you're right. I don't know. Piece of You was really weird. So you have, one of the things I will say is that you have, especially the bass, when the bass on this album is good, it's amazing. That's mostly just because he keeps getting like really skilled people to play it. But yeah, Piece of You, I think it's a perfect example of a song that just doesn't know what it wants to be. I mean, you have a really chunky bass lead, and it goes from like this, I mean, insanely happy sounding like chorus part,
right,
to super dark. It sounds like a different song, and it doesn't mesh well at all together. And then all of a sudden it'll just go back to the happiest like sitcom sounding music ever, and then I just don't understand. Like, it just feels a lot clumsier, and yeah, it's kind of confusing in a lot of ways to me. But yeah, and then Face the Moon, like whenever it's the cheery part set, it kind of reminds me of the music that plays like whenever somebody's like, I'm visiting an island on like in like a movie.
Oh sure.
Yeah, it's like, oh, like that tropical, the stereotypical cliched tropical music that plays in your head.
Right.
That's what that like reminds me of.
Right.
So it's like you have these chunks of good pieces of music. Are they put together the best way? Probably not. But I don't know. It's probably what's weird. It's probably going to appeal to a lot more people than Dust did, because Dust is so far out there, and Unshattered is in a way a lot safer.
I agree with you. Yeah. I mean, I can see Unshattered being way more popular than Dust.
Less grains of sand.
It's less gritty.
Yeah, less gritty. You only have to pick up, it's like one piece, Anyway, it's a piece of you.
Yeah. Well, 'cause yeah.
Anyway, what else do you have to say about Dust, huh?
Well, I mean, I wish he would give what he's got, because he sure didn't on this album.
Oh, that's pretty good. You wrote that down, huh?
I didn't actually. I just made that up.
Oh, nice. Yeah, so that's Unshattered. I mean, obviously, I liked it a lot better than you. I still recommend it. I mean, if you want to hear something that actually kind of sounds like Peter Murphy coming into the new millennium, this is it. But obviously, it's not for everybody inside of this room.
50% of the population in this room agrees with you.
Oh, man. But yeah, that's Unshattered. After the release of
Unshattered,
Peter Murphy did a whole bunch of stuff. He went on tour for a while. He reunited with Bauhaus for Coachella, and they also did an album called Go Away White, which I did not enjoy that much. But they did.
What are you talking about? That's obviously a better album than... I'm just kidding.
Right. Not again. But yeah, so he did that whole thing, and then that had its own, again, like that's, you can read all about that now because it was so long ago. It was 10 years ago or 11 years ago now, 2008.
Wild.
He also did a few different covers with Nine Inch Nails, and they're really cool. Like he did a few different performances with Trent Reznor and did like Dead Souls, I think, for Joy Division. And he also did some covers through iTunes. This is what we're talking about, like where we're so confused about like, what the heck is his 8th album technically. But he did like some John Lennon stuff, some David Bowie stuff, and he went on tour with that again. In 2010, he canceled a huge tour, a 100-date tour or something.
Wow.
That was being planned with Brendan Perry of Dead Can Dance. And he
that's right.
Yeah, and he canceled because he was having some health issues. That's what Murphy said. Murphy said he was having health issues, which Perry apparently was not very happy about. Also in 2010, he appeared in Twilight Eclipse as the ancient vampire. I mentioned that in my Goth Unusual Places video.
Yeah, I don't think he got paid for that one, right? He's just like, just put me in it. It's cool.
I don't know. No, I'm sure he got paid. I mean, it's him. It is Peter Murphy.
That's true.
So he did a whole bunch of those things. And then he is like, okay, well, I guess I'm releasing a new album now. It's been technically 7 years, but who knows? Because we don't know what the heck the album order is supposed to be for these. Except we know that this one's 9th because it's called 9th.
It's called 9th, and everybody says it's the 9th album, even though they don't refer to the 8th.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, we're on to 9th, at least in 2011. He did start promoting this since 2010. I'll say a lot of people really liked this album when it came out. I remember people liking it when it came out, right?
Yeah.
It also spawned a lot of really funny Peter Murphy things that people still love pointing out because they're hilarious. We'll talk about that after we talk about some of the music. The 2 singles off of this album are I Spit Roses and Seesaw
Sway.
Yeah, Seesaw Sway, right? Yes. Yeah.
Seesaw Sway.
Yeah, Seesaw Sway. God, sounds so weird when I say it. Yeah, so those are the 2 singles from this album. And if you like those songs, I'm pretty sure you'll like the album because it's pretty consistent throughout the whole record. I like it. It's definitely a shift, just like how Unshattered was kind of a little bit of a snapshot, like kind of taking influence from what was modern at the time. This actually is kind of that too. I mean, for 2011, this has almost kind of like that indie rock sort of thing, like the way the guitars are done and stuff. And it's way more stripped down. Like Unshattered was super overproduced. This is like way more stripped down. Feels like an actual band.
Yeah, I think that's why I like this a heck of a lot more than Unshattered.
Yeah, well, it just feels a lot more genuine. It feels more like, people jamming in a room. And Peter Murphy said that it was a kind of a continuation of Go Away White, where Go Away White that was Bauhaus's last album.
Great album.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing about it. So he's saying that it's a continuation of it, right? Because with that record, it was pretty much just Bauhaus jamming, and then they kind of just laid some vocals on it, and it was kind of done just to get something done, And I don't think that technique works for Bauhaus. I think that they're much more of a different kind of musicians, right? And it seems to really work for this lineup for Peter Murphy, because a lot of songs are really good. Like I said, what I hear in this album is a lot of kind of the stuff that, at least as far as the sound and the mixing is concerned, a lot of what was popular at the time. And it just reminds me of a lot of what was like the indie rock sound, especially with the kind of shimmery yet kind of distorted guitars. Especially the drums really remind me of it. Not like the kind of dream pop alternative, like that kind of stuff, but like the actual stuff that was on radio,
Right.
Maybe like something like, I don't know, like Block Party's heavier stuff or something. I don't know. Just in the way it's mixed. But I really like it. It's the songs aren't that complicated. It's not like tons of solos or like Dust with all this stuff. It's pretty much guitar, bass, drums. And then vocals.
This album is pretty rocking.
Yes, I would agree with that.
I really enjoyed it. I'd say it's a pretty close second to Dust for me.
Oh, really? For this episode?
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. Well, it's so funny because I don't know. No, I don't know what's my favorite this one. They're too different. I don't know. It's just too different. I really can't change. I mean, I really can't pick. The thing that I will say about this record is Peter Murphy, his voice, it almost seemed to get like a little bit deeper with this release. At least to me, it seems noticeable to where all of a sudden it was just a little bit deeper than it was with the previous records. Yeah. And that could also be because it was 7 years later.
True. Yeah, he's 7 years older.
Yeah, but it does seem to me like all of a sudden it's just his voice has changed a little bit, whereas it didn't really change that much over his other records. It's hard to say exactly what it is, but also, I don't know if you noticed this, but it was kind of bugging me. The way he kind of pronounces stuff, kind of the tone of his voice or the way he says some words seems really weird sometimes.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Like, first track, Velocity Bird.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's a perfect example.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like he's trying to do like an accent or something like that, but I have no idea what it is, and I don't know why.
It's weird, but I dig it. It's interesting, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how to describe it. You almost have to hear it yourself. There's also some pretty funny things in Never Fall Out. Gross. That one, it's like acoustic-y, it's kind of ballady.
Yeah.
But I don't know what it is. Throughout the whole song, his voice just sounds a little bit off, and it's hard to put my finger on it. But the ooh, like that is so dramatic. And it's just, I'm like, man, I don't know what he was doing with this. It still works for the context of the album, but especially coming off of, we listen to so much music in these, when we do these episodes, that it becomes more noticeable. It's not just like, oh, there's 7 years and there's a new release. Like, oh, there's a new vocal style. It's like, we just heard 3 albums and we also did a review of 4 other records, and all of a sudden, like, he's singing on here and like, what the heck is...
Stuff stands out way more.
Yeah.
Because of that. Speaking of things standing out, you mentioned Never Fall Out. The guitar and rhythm reminds me, so you're talking about kind of, it sounds like a lot of the music of the time.
Yeah.
Wicked Game by Chris Isaak.
That's funny because I said that on the other album too.
Yeah.
He does that a whole bunch. There's also, I showed you for this, Piece to Each.
Right.
The tone, by the way, I don't really like the wah-y sort of stuff, like, the wah, 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 sort of wah.
Sure.
But the tone, remember the distortion tone? It sounds like Marilyn Manson's Get Your Gun.
Yeah, it absolutely does.
I was listening to it, I was like, what does that sound? I was like, that sounds like Marilyn Manson's Get Your Gun. And I played side by side, and it's like, yeah, that definitely sounds like it. I'm not just crazy. You have a few different things like that, but it works a lot better than Unshattered. It feels a lot less of just Peter Murphy and friends. It feels like, okay, here's a Peter Murphy band. On
some of these songs too, I have a problem a little bit with repetition, but
that's the biggest issue with this. A
lot of times, like, the vocal cadence will break up the repetition, like, so you don't notice it as much. Like, there's a lot of repetitious guitar, in I Spit Roses, but it doesn't stick out as much because his vocal cadence is really what's driving the song and the rhythm there.
Yeah.
And so there's a couple instances like that, but where I had a problem with it on Unshattered, I didn't have any real issues with it here.
Yeah, it's definitely repetitious, but it works for the style of the album in that it's aggressive rock and roll sort of music. It didn't bother me that much. Whenever you do it in the context of the way we review stuff, where you kind of sit down with it and you do it, yeah, it definitely gets old by the end of it. But that's just because we're sitting there focusing on this stuff. Like, we're like, okay, like another verse, okay, another chord, okay, yeah, all right, and then the next song starts up and like, okay, another guitar rock song, so it's and that way, if you're driving around and stuff, you're not even gonna notice it. You do have those standout tracks that kind of try to distance themselves or kind of do something a little different. Uneven and brittle, really chunky guitar.
Oh yeah,
super overdriven.
I love the distortion on there.
Yeah, it's so good. The only thing I wanted on that song was I don't like it that much whenever songs just have a because it has these chords that go like it has these very distinct chords, and I always like to have a driving bass whenever there's something like that. I don't like the dryness of just the bass and drums. I mean, just the drums and guitar.
Yeah.
That was my only criticism. And that song is awesome. And it's just like that guitar it sticks in your head, and you're listening to it, man,
he's playing so low on the guitar. For me, like, I don't really miss the bass that much because he's not really doing any medleys. So, it's already pretty low. So I don't really miss it, but I could see where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, actually, I think one of the songs that like really sums up to me like the influence of like indie rock or whatever you want to call it, or modern rock, whatever people call it nowadays, is Slow Down. I remember you listened to it and you said you should speed up, because he says that a lot in that song.
He does, yeah. I think the pacing's great for that song, and yeah, the lyrics are, he says the same thing over and over and over again, but the energy's so good on that song I don't really mind.
Mm-hmm. I did notice that like in the background there's like some kind of, I just call it goofy synths.
Yeah.
But it has totally like a modern sounding guitar. Like if you're looking for a song to kind of be an example of what I'm trying to describe as like the sound, and what I think dates the album to 2011, that would be that song.
You mentioned his voice earlier too, and on this particular song I wanted to point out, like, his voice gets a little raspy in places.
Yeah.
I really like that in singers, especially like when they're singing live. If their voice gets raspy unintentionally, or I don't know, like there's something about it that just strikes a chord with me.
Yeah.
So I really like that in the song too. I have no idea whether or not it's intentional there, but it works really well.
Yeah, there's something up. I don't know exactly what the story is behind this, but he definitely has something like, there's a shift in his voice at this time. It just seems like it got deeper, and there's a lot of shows from around this, I think like 2008 onwards, where it seems pretty distinctly different. Of course, he's just getting older. That also affects your voice pretty dramatically over a decade. But yeah, I really, really like this record. I mean, pretty much going back to rock, it's for the most part pretty simple, pretty much delivers what it says it's going to, and pretty consistent.
Yeah, and Peter Murphy's voice, even though it's a little different, is still amazing.
Yeah, if you're not listening like us, you probably won't even notice. Like, just the fact that we listen to all stuff in a really similar time period, like, usually days of it, or sometimes right after an album. So, of course, we're going to notice, like, hey, he's pronouncing things differently. So
then 3 albums ago,
yeah,
that were
right?
at least 20 years apart or whatever. I'm surprised you haven't mentioned the Prince and Old Lady Shade yet.
Oh, with like the awesome bass on it.
I think it's the best song on the album.
You think that's the best song on the album?
I do. I mean, I like a lot of these songs, but I think out of all of them, that one has me like moving the vehicle around while I'm rocking out driving down the road.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
And what is it about it that you like?
I don't know. It's just really freaking catchy, man.
Huh.
And easy to sing along to. I don't know. Good.
I mean, yeah, I like it too. I mean, it's a good song. I don't know exactly what my favorite. Man, the problem is I think I Spit Roses is like, because I saw the video and the video's so good.
Oh, so I mean, if we're taking into account the video, then yeah, that's easily the best one on the album.
God, that video is so good.
It is. The artwork on there is just amazing. It's well shot, well put together.
Yeah.
There's a couple technical weird oddity things, but yeah. I mean, you have to be really looking for them.
Yeah. If you as far as I know, I mean, we talk about the videos as we review albums. And as far as I know, Unshattered didn't have a video. As far as I can tell, I don't think Dust did either. But there's 2 videos for Ninth that I know of, and one's I Spit Roses, and the other one is Seesaw Sway. I don't know. I keep on thinking of like a children's playground. But I Spit Roses is like such an awesome video. It's basically just Peter Murphy and like he's on a whole bunch of art and it's a really cool story. And
if you like Millie's style and also like Tonight, Smashing Pumpkins.
Oh yeah.
Then you'll very likely appreciate this. It's not exactly the same, but it's similar style.
It kind of reminds you of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just like, dang, this is freaking awesome.
I said SS Millie's because that's a nod in the Smashing Pumpkins video to the Millie's animation.
I think it's Malay. I think.
Whatever.
Whatever. But yeah, this tour did spawn some very interesting things. This album actually was pretty well received. Definitely. I mean, especially compared to something like Dust, which is kind of crazy. And Unshattered had, it just seemed like this got a lot more attention than some of his more recent things. That's because the record industry changed in that time, and he kind of became more of an icon. I mean, he already was, but it kind of like, the internet is.
Right.
Kind of brings back some of these other things. People are like, oh, he's finally doing the thing that I'm watching the other videos from,
Well, I think this is just more easily accessible, like easily consumed, kind of more mainstream than the others were.
What are you talking about? Having to go to Best Buy and find your Peter Murphy Unshattered CD?
Well, I mean, yeah, that, but also when you're talking about what's going to be popular for the most amount of people,
Oh yeah, and in the Seesaw Sway video, I do not like his mustache and goatee.
I think it works for him.
Okay, never mind. Whatever.
Yeah.
He has some Peter Murphy faces that are pretty funny though.
Okay.
But yeah, this led to some pretty weird things at the time. One of the famous, really funny things is when he played Amoeba, and people did comment on this at the time, is that Peter Murphy was getting a little chubby, and he has like that total white dude chubbiness, where all of a sudden he gets like a big belly, and then he doesn't really get big anywhere else, and so he was playing the Amoeba show, and he's like, look at, he tells the band, he's like, don't play anything, like stop playing, whatever. He's like, look at my boobs. He starts like grabbing his boobs. He's like, no, you don't touch my boobs. Like, he's like, I can touch my boobs. I was just like, man, it's this really funny, really famous, like Peter Murphy joke thing.
It's so good too. You should see the video.
Yeah,
it's worth watching.
Look up Peter Murphy at Amoeba Records.
Yeah,
2011. We also had some not so flattering things happen in between this and the next album.
Well, but he's a rock star. He gets a few of those, right?
Yeah. So in 2013, so the next album line, I think it was 2014 was when the album was released, but we're not talking about that album today.
Right.
So in between, 9th, we always do the facts up to the next album. Peter Murphy in 2013, he was in some kind of collision. He did a hit and run, and he was sentenced to 3 years of probation in order to attend some NA meetings. He was driving under the influence of drugs and convicted of some meth possession. He kind of agreed to this bargain, if you will.
Sure.
And here's his mugshot.
Oh, yeah, that's super flattering.
Yeah, right? Maybe not the best thing for, somebody who you're going to go buy tickets for, to be like, oh,
yeah,
man,
don't do hard drugs, kids.
Yeah, it's not recommended. That was kind of like one of the, I was just like, what? But he did do a whole bunch of other things. He also did the Mr. Moonlight tour, and I think there's even an album from that, but we're not talking about that today. This is pretty much where album we're going to stop with today. Kind of a weird time for Peter Murphy. I mean, it's kind of been a weird time recently. I mean, we've all seen, probably most people who have seen this have seen even recently, he's had the heart issue, and he also had the thing where he was fighting with the bouncers and all this stuff. And so kind of a weird, he doesn't really stop. I'll put it that way. Maybe he should slow down a little bit.
Well, change his worldview as far as his personal entertainment, maybe.
Yeah.
And then, because we want him to keep making music and doing his thing, but maybe live a little longer.
Yeah. Oh man, it's a hard subject. But yeah, so as far as Peter Murphy's, if we're gonna do part 3 on Peter Murphy, I keep on thinking about like how we could do it. We have the album Lion, which would be 10th album, I guess. I don't know.
Sure.
Maybe
we do live albums plus Lion plus EPs.
Yeah. Also the iTunes stuff. Collaborations. Because Peter Murphy has appeared in a lot of stuff, and I was thinking maybe we could do like Dolly's Car or something. Those 2 albums.
Yeah.
So if we end up doing Peter Murphy Part 3, that'll probably be what it is, unless here's his new album or something. But yeah, it's so funny because I remember, I talk to my parents all the time.
Yeah.
And my mom was like, "Oh, cause they like especially my grandma listens to the show, which is so funny."
Hey, Grandma.
Yeah, right. Hi, Grandma. And so she listens to it, and my mom was like, "Oh, what are you guys gonna cover today?" I was like, "Oh, I'm covering Peter Murphy." She's like, "Do you ever stop talking about Bauhaus?" I was like, "People love it when we talk about Bauhaus." I was like, "And we still have so much more we can do. Like, we can do Tones on Tail, which is that's Daniel Ash and David J's, like, maybe it's Kevin Haskins. I forget who was involved in what eventually. But then we could do Love and Rockets, all those Love and Rocket records, and then also Daniel Ash has his own solo albums, and then David J has his own solo albums. And
right.
I was like, there's so much we could do. I could never stop talking about him. I thought that was funny. You always forget how much music they make. I mean, I guess because people always just like, oh, they made it in Flatfield, or like they made those 4 Bauhaus albums. Like they made a lot of other albums, even especially Love and Rockets. That was like a successful band. But, in the modern view, it's like, oh, well, they did Bauhaus. Like, it's like, man, that must hurt. Like, that's to do the album Pop Tone, which I reviewed that on YouTube. It was okay.
All right.
It was just covers of like Tones on Tail, like all the other stuff they did. They just did covers of their old stuff. I was like, why did you even?
It's kind of cheating, isn't it?
It was. They did an album. They did a live album of.
You mean it's a re-recording?
It was re-recording. Yeah, they just re-recorded their old songs, and I was like, okay. I mean, that's cool. That's fine. Anyway, this was Peter Murphy Part 2. Weird note to end on. I mean, just because, this is a lot of stuff going on.
A lot of different stuff released in the last 4 or 5, depending upon who you're asking, albums. Yeah, I mean, I think
seriously, if you know the order of the albums, tell us.
Right.
100%. If you know what the order of the albums is.
You need to be able to prove it.
Yes, we need to know. I want to know, because Holy Smoke definitely has to be 4. Okay, there's no way that isn't his 4th album. What are the albums that lead us up to the album 9th being the 9th album? I am so confused. And people will say it's the Recall EP, but I really don't think that's what people are including. I mean, what did Peter Murphy include for him to name that album 9th? I'm really curious. Anybody out there knows, feel free.
If there's an interview or something where he specifically states, which albums are what number, then that'd be perfect.
That'd be great. Anyway, thanks for listening. The end. No, I'm just kidding. You can leave a review on iTunes if you see fit. Also, you can listen to us on Spotify. Did you know that GothCast is brought to you in part by thebelfry.rip? And you can check out many different podcasts and lots of different content relating to the goth subculture. Did you know that, Brian?
I did know that, but only because I've been a listener for many, many years, and also I've been doing this podcast with you.
That makes sense. You can also check GothCast out on Instagram, and mostly on Instagram. I'm just not really a social media person, as probably most of you listeners know. But if you want to keep up with me outside of the videos and podcasts, which, by the way, you can go to videos. GothCast video on YouTube. We got hours worth of content. I have several Lord of the Rings worth of movies content on there.
It's true. And Donnie won't lower himself to begging, but I will. Please subscribe, ring the bell, follow us on iTunes. Not iTunes. Follow us on Spotify.
Oh, yeah, Spotify. Yeah, Spotify, man, that's growing.
Leave a review on iTunes. If you leave a review on iTunes, you're automatically going to be entered into the next contest we do where we give something away.
Yeah.
Anyway, do that, because not only are you entered into the contest, but it also helps us out immensely.
It does. That is definitely the thing that helps us out the most, because the way iTunes works. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed everything. And of course, do you know what you can do, Brian?
I have a guess.
Do you know?
I'm positive I know. Take care of yourself. And
that was it. Yeah. No, you got it. It's a wrap. Stay okay.